Let's continue our focus on this and ask specifically how technology can help preserve mother languages. And as you can see, we're joined now by the director of the Institute for Intelligent Systems at UJ, that's Professor Mpho Primus, who's actually heading research which aims to teach artificial intelligence systems to understand and respond to our indigenous languages. Prof, lovely to see you. What a fascinating point of study. And thanks very much indeed for making time for us here on the SABC. We'll speak a bit more about your research, but I wanted to just highlight the language ironically being used in describing today. I think typically people speak of mother tongue, but actually what we're being told to observe today is Mother Language Day. Is there an important distinction to be made there?
I mean, this day was announced, and hi to the viewers at home, and hi, and thank you so much for having me. This day was announced in 1999 by UNESCO, and the aim is for the protection and preservation of all languages used by people around the world, not only spoken, because as we know, there are some indigenous languages where, you have very, very few speakers that are actually at risk of dying out. Some have already died out, but they are, being documented due to some initiatives. So the distinction may be small, but it's a distinction that we need to, keep in mind also, not only spoken, but all languages used by people around the world.
Absolutely. Small distinction, but an important one nonetheless to note. I suppose speaking of mother languages is a whole lot more inclusive than mother tongues, despite how ubiquitous that term is.
Yeah.
All right. Onto your study, artificial intelligence and the role it can play in helping us understand indigenous languages. I have to ask you where your interest in this had come from. There must be a story to it, because this is certainly very unique.
It is unique. I entered the natural language processing space around 2009, 2008, 2009. And it was, research in South Africa. You had the linguists on one end and the engineers on the other hand, and the discussion was always, we include the languages in the human language technologies that are developed, but there are certain features that we can check out. And for our local indigenous languages, we have this very important feature, which is tone, that we use to distinguish meaning. So you would have, for instance, Mpho means I'm Mpho, and then Mpho means he or she is Mpho. And this difference in meaning is made by tone, because if you write in orthography, it's the same thing. And I always have felt very importantly that we not only include our languages in speech technologies, but we make sure that they're fully represented with their features in the system. So not only inclusion, but equal advancement and treatment of these languages, and not just what we can kick in, put in and put out. So this is basically how my story starts. And beyond that, we have made very huge strides, in South Africa for indigenous languages. And today, and for the past 2 days, we are having researchers from around the SADC region working in natural language processing linguistics for African languages, kind of sharing ideas, the work that we're doing together, and see how we can collaborate cross-border.
How many languages are typically involved in the kind of research you're doing? I mean, you make mention of sub-Saharan Africa being involved, which must mean it's more than just the, 12 languages we have in the country?
Yeah. So we have individual researchers working in their own language or language groups. I, in my own personal research, focus on Sesotho, Swana, and Sepedi, because I look at the sound system, and they have the same sound system, and they're mutually intelligible, which makes it easier. But it is quite interesting to also note that Bantu languages have this tone feature across all of them, except Swahili, and this happened due to language contact. So we can share lessons learned when we talk about sound systems and how tone moves in Bantu languages. So depending on which feature we're looking at, which speech technology we're looking at, there are always lessons and cross-border lessons to kind of, learn from each other. And most importantly, in terms of advances in languages and AI, South Africa is put a lot of effort in terms of research and development, and we're seeing startups coming up in terms of commercialization. So we are at a better footing to also now go out into other parts of our continent, into the other parts of our southern part of our continent, and share lessons learned, and also do knowledge transfer and learning.
So what in an ideal world would for you be the end result of this research? We're typically told that any research must be able to answer a central question, so to speak. So in your mind, is, the result of a successful process us being able to communicate in different indigenous languages using AI, or are you looking more specifically at a preservation of these languages through artificial intelligence?
I mean, there's two things. There's the preservation element, which is quite important. We are seeing changes in language use amongst young native speakers. But most importantly, I want everyone to be able to access these technologies and communicate and use these technologies that in a language that is actually, comfortable to the person using the technology. One of the assumptions that are made when these technologies are deployed, and this is by both big tech and the public sector in that digital transformation initiatives, is that you have to have internet, the right device, but you need to be technical savvy. What does this mean? You have to be digitally illiterate and unfortunately be fluent or comfortable in a language that is mostly, a global north language. In our country, it's English. And as we deploy these technologies into communities under the guise of bridging the divide and the digital divide, solving socioeconomic problems, if people cannot use these technologies because they're not designed in their own means of communication, we are going to further, divide. This digital and economic and social divide will actually widen instead of what we are claiming to do, instead of making it smaller.
The language barrier is indeed a huge barrier to bridging that digital divide. So I absolutely agree with that. What I found, though, is that language is not stagnant. It continues to evolve, but only if it's continuously used. And so I do wonder the kind of challenges that you are confronted with as you tried, for example, to describe artificial intelligence in Setswana or Sesotho in a context where the language isn't used in that space.
I mean, I always I'm not very comfortable usually saying artificial intelligence, because it doesn't do justice to what AI is. AI is a huge field. And this field is basically modeling human intelligence into systems, of a bird of, for a simpler word, computers. And how we actually also convey this message to communities. We need to be also quite mindful when we say we are modeling human intelligence into systems, because then people say, it's going to replace us. But the main aim of this technology is, from the official conception of AI as a field, was never to, replace humans. It was always to improve operation efficiency, do tasks that we find cumbersome, right? There's complex calculations. I will do the analysis, do the calculations for me, do my dishes, wash my car, so I can spend more time painting. And this has always been, the main aim for AI. Of course, it changes over time with researchers getting a bit excited. Artificial general intelligence, we are, 10 years away from getting a computer that is as smart as us. But it is those kind of things that actually make technology adoption and acceptance, particularly in Africa, become very low, on top of the language barrier.
Absolutely. In some instances, these developments seem to be at the heart of geopolitical tensions even. So you speak about people getting ahead of themselves. That's certainly a case in point. Prof, you and I can speak, I guess, until the next technology is developed to wash our cars. But that's the time we have for this morning. It's an absolutely fascinating piece of research, and I certainly hope it gets a whole lot more airtime than what we could do today. Well, Professor Mpho Primus is with the University of Johannesburg, in fact, the director for the Institute for Intelligent Systems there, helping us understand, in some ways, the potential intersections between AI, technology, and the preservation of our mother languages.